This reading is centered around pride. Pride is a sense of self-worth, being satisfied with who you are and what you've done. But pride can also become dangerous when it turns into superiority. Imagine the bully who crowns themselves as better than you. They pick at qualities you can't change while recruiting others to hurt you too. How many of us have dated someone or had a parent who refused to take responsibility for the pain they caused? They have too much pride to let their ego shatter, so they deflect, leaving you to deal with the trauma they created. When we speak about being proud, it is never an issue unless it has crossed into arrogance. However, some of us brought up in religious homes learned that pride is something to be ashamed of, that pride is the first sin. We were taught that pride led Satan to rebel and exalt himself above God, so it had to be rooted out. We were told to humble ourselves, be passive, and feel shame if we dared to feel proud. You may have internalized that message. Perhaps you stood in front of a mirror every day, refusing to look directly at yourself, only fixing what needed to be fixed. You didn't want to be stuck up because you were told that was rooted in evil. But then, one day, someone notices you. They flatter you in ways no one ever has. It may never have dawned on you that they did this because they noticed you had no self-worth. When predators see that you don't value yourself, they recognize how easy it is to shape your reality. They tell you that to sit on your throne is an act of war against the divine. But the real war is the one waged against you by those who want your seat empty. When you refuse to take pride in your existence, you leave a vacuum that predators are all too happy to fill. The same person who lifted you up eventually becomes the same abusive partner who drags you down. In a spiritual sense, if lower vibrational forces want to keep a high potential soul from realizing its nature, they don't always use direct attacks. They use the inversion of virtue. They tell the soul that its light is pride, so that the soul will voluntarily dim itself. A god who believes they're a worm is much easier to manage than a god who remembers their lineage. Even worse, you may be someone who had no pride. You weren't just humble, you had low self-esteem and no respect. You thought you were unworthy of love and dignity. For a while, this may have worked. You may have gotten away with hating yourself because when you make yourself small, everyone around you feels tall. However, it left you open to being taken advantage of. No one will respect you more than you respect yourself because people learn how to treat you by watching how you treat yourself. Eventually, you recognize that the real message you needed was to love yourself. Truly. See, what they don't tell you is that the arrogant person lacks self-love just as much as the person with no pride. Arrogance is a facade, like a small dog barking loudly to hide its fear. The arrogant forgets they're connected to everything and acts as if they're the sole source. The shrunken forgets they're the spark of the divine and acts as if they're nothing. Both are lost in the same fog. The distorted pride catches the tongue of parents who refuse to acknowledge wrongdoing. It prevents coworkers from admitting they're lost and partners from admitting they're wrong. Pride can even prevent you from taking opportunities, much like the heron. The heron stood by the clear water to catch fish, but refused any that were too small. By morning, the fish were gone, and he had to settle for a small snail. This is the person who feels they're too good for a position, never recognizing that those small fish could have been stepping stones to where they wanted to go. Oftentimes, we learn pride by watching others misuse it. The parent who never apologized, the supervisor who pretended to understand everything while completely lost, the partner who refused to admit fault because they felt wrong, the partner who refused to admit fault because being wrong felt like losing power. That kind of pride teaches silence, avoidance, and a fear of humility. But avoiding pride entirely isn't the answer. Living in extreme doesn't protect you either. The person with inner strength and leadership is often gaslit into believing they're too much because their mere presence demands a higher standard. Those in power fear the person who cannot be bought with flattery or broken by shame. With time and life experience, you must start to take pride in yourself because you should no longer be willing to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Your feet hurt from allowing people to step on your toes, yet you might still feel like a peacock refusing to show its feathers because pride is still new to you and you fear being judged. However, a healthy amount of pride will balance your self-worth. It reminds you that you deserve respect while acknowledging you still have room to grow. Pride should not blind you, it should steady you. Not the kind of pride that refuses to apologize, but the kind that refuses to shrink. The kind that allows you to walk into the room without lowering your head, but also without needing to stand above anyone else. True pride is not about being better than others. It's about finally believing that you are not less.